Where am I? What am I trying to do? And ultimately, in the end, what do I need to do to accomplish that goal instead of just reacting to whatever may happen?
I'm here because I have a vision and a purpose, and I'm moving towards that regardless of what happens in that day.
Yeah, if we're not present, we're passive,
hmm
right? So if we're passive, then what happens? We're passively letting someone else lead and guide our day.
Yeah.
But if we're present, we're focused on our objectives of the day, towards our purpose, and that's how we make progress.
Hello again, and welcome to ReedFlections, a podcast on life, leadership, and learning. I'm Art Calderon, along with Reed Nyffeler. As always, Reed is a CEO of a growing global company, a father and a husband, a local community leader. We are on episode 20, Reed, if you can believe that. Hard to believe, but here we are. Now, let's do a brief recap. Episodes 1 through 4, we talked about priorities. 5 through 9, habits. 10 through 13, know your purpose. And 14 through 19, start your journey. I'm tired just reading all that off the prompts. Very good. Now, episodes 14 through 19 just finished, and now we're launching, as I said, into the episode 20, which this section, 20 through 24, is Be Present on Purpose. And today, we're going to talk about daily activity. Recap, if you will, Reed, what we've covered so far on knowing and pursuing our purpose.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we are already now 20 episodes in and just you doing that recap kind of burned you out. We got to work on your endurance, Art. So hopefully the audience's endurance is stronger than yours because we're 30 seconds into this thing. But, ultimately, we are now at that stage and everybody, we're at the daily, living daily on purpose. And as I look at the daily, that's where we all live, right? We wake up in the mornings and we say, hey, where are we at today? What are we going to do today? And everything's around the daily. But you can't have a good day unless you had a good dream that became a vision, that became a purpose statement. And so everything leads to the daily. And so if you're just joining us now at this stage at episode 20 and you're thinking, all right, I can master the day, we can have a great day, but it can be the wrong direction. And that's required to start with those priorities we started about before. And then we all build habits, and our habits, if it's not daily, it may not be a habit. Right? We may have weekly habits, but if it's not daily, it's not a habit. And then ultimately we begin that journey, and we started with a long-term vision and we worked our way all the way down. And now here we are living in that daily. And so our daily is where our habits will be revealed and broken, right? They'll be revealed and possibly broken, but we really want to build habits. And that starts on the daily. And so that's kind of where we're at now, is how do we have that directional day? Right? Not a great day. We always talk about having a great day, but how do we have that directional day, directing that towards our purpose?
So days can be good or bad. Sometimes we don't have any control over it, but it needs to be in keeping with that strategy we created with habits and with a purpose and with goals and moving that way.
Absolutely. If our days are built on an emotional response, how was your day?
Uh,
Good or bad?
uh-huh.
Right? Instead, for me, I want to make progress each day,
Right.
right? Because a day, I'm attaching emotion to it when I say good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's progressively towards my purpose, then I've accomplished something, right? And
Right.
it can be a bad day, but I made progress towards my purpose, right?
Right.
Because ultimately, as we recap, my purpose statement is through intuitive interaction, propel leaders over their self-imposed barriers to live out their unique purpose. And so that self-imposed barrier may equate to what many would say is a bad day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we may have had a place where we had to confront that self-imposed barrier, and that was a bad day, but that's progress, right? When we recognize we have a barrier,
Right.
that could be bad, but it could be progress. And so really we should not measure our day by emotion, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
We should measure it by progress. And then we know we're achieving our purpose much more readily.
Because we don't have any control over a lot of things that happen to us, but like you said, it's the self-imposed barriers, not
That's right.
anything else, right? Self-imposed. So we have control of how we react to those obstacles that come our way.
That's exactly right.
Very good.
Yeah, those emotional self-imposed barriers for sure.
Good. Now, you've talked a lot about being present,
Mm-hmm.
right? And why is that important? What does that mean? And how does that fit into all this?
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but we can live a default life, and that default life, we're just not present. I mean, if you go reflect back to any material or immaterial days, we were just defaulting. We were defaulting where it was. But present means, okay, what am I trying to accomplish today? And that's saying, now I'm not just waking up and we'll see what today brings. I have a purpose each and every day saying, okay, as I go through that day, what am I trying to accomplish? And that's being present. And then saying, okay, if I'm trying to accomplish this, where are opportunities to advance that, make progress, right? And that's being present. That's thinking, okay, where am I? What am I trying to do? And ultimately, in the end, what do I need to do to accomplish that goal? Instead of just reacting to whatever may happen, right? And we just let the time pass and watch the hours click along, and we aren't really present. We're just letting the day pass and looking forward to the next day. For what reason? I don't know. Why are we looking forward to the next day if we don't have a purpose for today, right? It doesn't make any sense to me.
So it's more of a presence of mind, knowing I'm here for more than just reaction to what happens to me. I'm here because I have a vision and a purpose, and I'm moving towards that regardless of what happens in that day.
Yeah, if we're not present, we're passive, right? So if we're passive, then what happens? We're passively letting someone else lead and guide our day.
Yeah.
But if we're present, we're focused on our objectives of the day, towards our purpose, and that's how we make progress.
Okay. So how do you, it's one thing to say that, but how do you remain present during your days? What exercise, or how do you do that?
Yeah, and again, this is kind of building from the beginning. I remember my priorities, right? Faith, family, productivity, and then ultimately recovery or relaxation time, right? And then we built that around our purpose statement, right? And so we know that to be eternal, transcendent, universal, everything aligns. We build our purpose statement, and then as we've kind of manifested that over a long-term vision all the way down to the monthly, weekly, now here we are daily, it's saying, okay, what do I need to accomplish today to make progress for the week that leads to my monthly objectives, right? That hits my quarterly milestones, right? And annual milestones beyond. And so then today, what do I need to accomplish, right? And many times I think humans, as adults, we live in the daily. We know what we want to accomplish that day, right? We wake up and say, I got to get this done today.
I'm going to look at my schedule for today.
I need to look at my schedule. And now if we are not driving those deadlines are driving us, right? As an example, whether it's tax filing or, I got to turn this in, this bill needs to be paid today, or I got to re-register for this, or a driver's license renewal comes up, whatever the circumstances might be, those deadlines are driving us.
Right.
What we want to do is drive the deadlines. And so that is ultimately how we plan the day. And that is done through our consistent habits, right? And so as we build our routine and we get through the consistent habits, we can now build our day. And the less decisions we make on a regular basis, because it's a habit, the less fatigue we have around regular routine decisions, and we can truly make progress.
Say that again, the less decisions?
The less decisions we make because they're habit, the more decisions we can make around making progress.
So you don't have to decide every time. You know what you're going to do because that's your habit.
Exactly, and it's daily. So as an example, we wake up and we have a daily routine and a habit, right? For me, I have a very habitual breakfast because it's less decision to make, right? It's way easier when my wife knows exactly what I want to order or have each morning, right? Which is a microwave meal that's 45 seconds or less, ideally. A coffee to get my energy up.
What do you do with all that time while
That's
you're
right.
waiting?
I'm tying my shoes, actually. I have a tight routine. And I have, while I'm making the coffee, then I'm tying my shoes, so that takes that long for the Keurig to cycle, right? And so then I'm ready to go. Well, then I don't have to think. And ironically, it gives me the ability, because that's now, that habit is in my subconscious. I can think about what I want to accomplish that day.
So you don't have to expend energy deciding on these little things, and you can use that energy towards something more important.
Right. And let's look at the alternative, right? Let's say everybody needs to eat breakfast or have some calories in the morning. Like, where am I going to get coffee today? I don't know. And you're thinking about it, right? 3 to 5 minutes later, you realize I should stop at X, Y, and Z coffee shop on the way home or on the way to work. And then,
have you ever ordered from those places? It takes a lot of energy. There's 17 adjectives.
That's right.
Put on those coffees.
And you got to read the menu and everything else. Just think of all the time that was applied to that if you have the same cup of coffee every day, or whatever that breakfast might be for you. And so you've eliminated the energy necessary to think about that. So then the next thing is this: I know my routine to work. That's the next step, right? So during the school year, I drop my son off at school, and we have a routine that we go through, right? Each and every morning we have a conversation prepping for that day. I don't have to think about what's my routine with my son.
Yeah.
I default to that, right? So then the next step is I'm driving to work. I'm thinking about, okay, what's going to happen right when I arrive at work, right? I review my schedule going forward. So if you just look at that first hour that I'm awake, those are habits. And so I don't have to think, because it's an ingrained habit that prepares me to make progress during the day. Then typically from 8 to 5, now my schedule may vary. but they're in blocks of time that we'll talk about in later podcasts. And those blocks of time allow me to be present at that block of time, knowing the rest of the day is planned out. And so for me, I don't begin a day without especially a work week, without a specified schedule that I'm adhering to that is designed to help me make progress towards my purpose.
Now, what's the temptation when things go haywire? When something like, you got your breakfast and you realize you're out of those special meals, right? How does that affect you?
Well, first of all, I'm never out of the special meals, right? Because ultimately, I count 5 to 7 days. I know my wife has her own habit, which is going to the grocery store once a week. And so you're always ahead, right? Because that's the power of a habit, right? Regardless of what your habits are, you could prepare for a habit because you know what's going to happen, right? If we know we're going to drive to work, we can look at the fuel gauge on our vehicle and at that point then stop and get gas. Likewise, if I know how much sandwiches, breakfast sandwiches or drinks I consume, I can count out the weeks ahead, right? And so we prepare for that habit. And so however things do go awry, it's just not in accordance to what we can control. And so things happen. And so what do? If we don't address some things immediately, then we cannot be prepared to purposefully get back on our progress going forward. And so what do we need to do? If something happens, right? And so any instance can happen. And that might be a natural disaster. That might be something that is a phone call from a friend that we want to take. However, we take that moment because we know we're making progress and we can schedule it within the progress. So as a franchisor, many times I get a text from a franchisee, can you have a call? This just happened last night at 10:30. Someone emailed me and said, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. And so I can do one of two things. I can let it distract me or I can fit that within the plan for the day. And so in my case, I have an assistant that helps me. And I said, email this. I copied the assistant on that. I said, hey, schedule this in my schedule so that I can make progress on this initiative for the day. If I took that call at that moment or at any intermediate moment throughout the day, then would I really make progress? Because it disrupted a plan. Progress happens with a plan. And so if there's something that is disrupting that, I'm losing the plan. However, I can make a disruptive moment and put that in the plan. And that's what I decided to do.
Aren't you like when you react like that, you're adopting their stress, right? And you're carrying it on there. And you can't do that when you have literally thousands of people in the network.
Yeah. And I won't even say the size of organization matters. You can't make progress if you consistently do that. If you don't have a plan for the day and then schedule it accordingly, and really there's the urgent, right? And certain things are going to be urgent, right? A health issue can be urgent. A car accident can be urgent. Things of that nature can be urgent. But then we can build a plan. Once we assess, and then we can determine where we want to place that in our day. It could be later, right? For example, let's say I'm driving home and my wife needs me to get something. Now, she can text me and say, I need you to pick this up. Or if a franchisee texts me, I'll call you on my drive home.
Very good. Now, you talked a little bit about the morning and how you have habits and daily habits that allow you to free up your mental capacity to focus on bigger and more important things. Talk more about your work week here at the office, what that looks like, and the habits you've instilled.
Yeah, and as I talk about that, I think distractions I've learned I can kind of compartmentalize around morning, noon, and night. And so for that reason, right at 8:00 when I arrive at the office, I kind of make the rounds of the people that directly report to me. And I say, hey, how's it going? Any distractions that may have come overnight or the day before that I need to be aware of? And for us, that's really from 8:00 to 8:45 here. I'm trying to check in with everybody that's a direct report, kind of a 3 to 5 minute check-in with each of them, just to kind of determine, okay, anything that I need to address directly. And generally speaking, almost every day there's something. And many times I'm just providing feedback. Why? Because if I don't address that between 8 and 8:45, they're going to be waiting for me to address that to make progress in their daily schedules. And so I try to get ahead of that and just schedule a time to address that. And then each and every day we have a collective team meeting. We call it our jump start at 8:45. And so everyone knows, and it's, scheduled break for the whole collective organization to make progress shortly thereafter. And so as I've seen this kind of manifest itself over the last couple of years, we see everybody kind of collectively develop a relationship from there, but also address items and issues with people they may not see all the time. And so as I have that daily jump start, I go over there and then I make sure that I catch up with anyone that I'm like, okay, per my 8 to 8:45 meetings, what are some follow-up elements that I need to have? And then from 8:45 to 9, I'm just closing out those conversations. Now that in my mind creates freedom to work on the schedule. And so as always, my 9 o'clock is the start of my first meeting. In fact, many of our podcasts are actually filmed at 9 o'clock,
Right.
and that's a starting time that everybody knows and allows for those who are getting in here early to set up for the podcast and whatever the case might be. And then I break that down, and we'll get to this in subsequent, podcasts, but at an hourly blocks, right? So everything's either an hour or a half hour block in my schedule. That allots for the appropriate amount of time to kind of get into the meat of the meeting and or whatever the case might be and go forward. And then over time, I make sure I have a scheduled break, right? And that's lunch for me. And since I began my career, I probably brought my lunch 2 or 3 times. That's because I thought I'll try this and I didn't like it. Why? Because I need the mental and physical break, right? To leave the progress of the day in appropriate slotted times to leave for lunch. Now I do have occasional and many times lunch meetings that are work related at the same time as I've changed the physical presence. And that is so critical for us in a daily routine to say, I can't just sit at my desk all day,
Mhm.
right? I can't just sit in this one environment because our minds stagnate at the same time and we can't truly make progress, right? We're going to change that. And I actually learned this very early on when I liked to do jigsaw puzzles. And so while it's a jigsaw puzzle, I heard one time, if you're really stuck on a problem, leave and come back. We try to sit there and find where that one piece goes. And I was like, that truly works. Why?
Like
Because
a mental break.
it's a
for you,
mental
huh?
break. It dislodges our subconscious
Uh-huh.
and also our consciousness so that we can refocus again. And if we are not taking that habitual break in the middle, sometimes we can't make progress in the afternoon of that day. And so take that habitual break on the daily. And that for me is lunchtime, where I leave. And then in the afternoon, again, it's those scheduled blocks of half hour to 1 hour. And ultimately, at the time before and after lunch, I'm also checking in to see if there's going to be any disruptions, right? I'm locked in meetings from 9 to 11:30. And then before and after lunch, I'm checking with my team. I'm walking out and saying, hey, anything that came up today so far that you need me to address or vice versa. I know we're going to have disruptions in our day. And many time people just wait until they cannot happen anymore.
Mhm.
It's kind of like scheduled maintenance, right? If we are not checking in, that's what the before the morning, noon, and night in my case are doing, then it's going to be a huge issue, right? If we have a leaky faucet, for example, and we're not addressing it, then ultimately it becomes a major issue. And to me, that's checking in at morning, noon, and night. And so then as I continue through the afternoon, it goes into those scheduled blocks again. And then I close out the day just double checking with everybody before I leave. And so that'll make sure that nothing blows up overnight that I wasn't already aware of.
So it sounds like a lot of communication, face to face communication, and so forth. So, what are some best practices you would give to us to help us make the most of our days at work or at the office or at home, wherever your day happens to be? What are some best practices?
Well, I would say build those daily habits, right? What are you doing before work? What are you doing right when you arrive at work, right? That's a critical structure. Then what are you doing in the meat of the morning? And then again, your transitional during the day. Really look at those things in time blocks. And then that afternoon. And then what can you do to leave work at work? I think that's also critical because, my third priority is productivity. And that's largely done at work. But my second priority is family and my first priority is faith. So if I don't leave work at work, then how can I truly be there for the sake of my
I think
family?
that's saying a lot that the CEO of a multi-million dollar company can leave work at work because so many of us think, oh, there's just so many demands on us, and I can't leave work at work. But if you could do it, then certainly anybody else should be able to do it.
And that's all the byproduct of the daily habits, right? And I recognize as the leader, my cadence, it really sets the tone for others. And so as I look at, okay, again, I generally arrive at 8 o'clock and I'm leaving, 5:30 typically,
Mhm.
as everybody else is departing. Well, that sets the pace for everybody else. And so it's a matter of those habits. And so in order for me, back to that point I was making earlier, to be at home, I have to make sure that I'm closing out all the mental objectives for the day between 5 and 5:30, right? So typically my last meeting ends at 4:30. Then I'm using that next hour to close out any initiatives I had for that day and really set up initiatives for next day. Because if I don't do that, it's undone, right? I mean, I'm sure we've all lived there and said, I need to do this tomorrow. I need to get this done. I didn't get this done today, right? And so we're thinking through all that. So I use that 4:30 to 5:30 time frame to close out all the objectives that I didn't want to leave undone, so that I can then focus on my family at the same time. Then for me, that last habit is transitioning on the way home. And so one of the things I've developed as a habit to begin that transition is calling my wife. Right as I leave the parking lot, I'm calling my wife, say, hey, I'm on my way home. Right. I think it's just a a nice thing to do at the same time as it begins that transition. And that to me is a trigger mentally to say, okay, now I'm transitioning to what needs to be done at home. And so many of those questions are around, hey, anything you need me to pick up? I'm already driving by. No sense in handing me back out. So it creates efficiency, reminding any items. Oh, yeah, you got to pick up your son from practice tonight, whatever the case may be.
You're going to call her about that time
right.
every day.
And if she hasn't heard from me and the day's running along, she's like, are you all right?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, yeah, I'm fine. Meeting's just running along, whatever the case might be. And at the same time I call my children who are not in Omaha at the same time, knowing that that might be a time where they're transitioning, either driving from point A to point B or otherwise. And so it's already preparing my mindset for that second priority, which is what I should be able to do, which is the family time, the focus. And again, that's a habit that has been ingrained into my mental routine that leads to daily progress.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of our time together. Thank you once again, Reed, for your time. Thank you, listeners. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. We'd love to have more listeners on, along with any comments you have. Next time, we're going to talk about being present, not somewhere else, being present right here, and having strong hourly structure. Until then, I'm Art Calderon, and be purposeful.
Now, if you are struggling to actually figure out how to make progress in life, we live in the daily, right? Many of us wake up each and every day, and each day, if your day is designed around emotion, if your language is saying emotional things like, did I have a good or bad day? It's a lot more difficult to make progress. Live your day on purpose. Recognize, here's how I want to wake up with a daily habit each and every day. And then what purpose am I trying to accomplish with my day? Then how will I measure progress? Morning, noon, and night. Look at things that might distract you from your purpose. Then schedule your progress. In the future, we'll break down each and every hourly and meeting moment and minute in order to make progress. Start today to make daily habits that'll lead towards progress towards your purpose.